Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to take a look at Christopher Watts again. But in this video, we're not going to look at the horrific crime that he committed. We're going to take a look at his life, the people that surrounded him when he was younger and he was most impressionable. We're going to take a look at the women that he dated and surrounded himself with his entire life, all the way up and ending with Nicole, his mistress. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Alright, now, the following information that I am reporting on here comes from three sources. One, statements that his family and friends have made. His friend of over 25 years recently came out and made a series of interviews about his friendship with Christopher Watts. Two, the second source of information comes from statements that family members recently have made on social media. Now, these are uncles and other family members who were close to the family, who would know more about the family dynamic and the earlier years of Christopher Watts. Three, these, what I'm reporting on here, come from people who have been around Christopher Watts and statements that he has made, Shanann made on social media going forward. That is the sources for this information. If you would like to verify my information, I suggest you start there. Okay. With that said, let's get into it. So, Christopher Watts. Growing up, Christopher Watts, the first 7 years of his life, from birth to 7, he was mainly surrounded by his mother, his grandmother, and an aunt. The three of them were the most impressionable upon Chris and shaping him into the young man that he would become. Now, his father was always in the picture, but his father was the main breadwinner for the family. Cindy, his mother, only took part-time jobs and temporary jobs the first 7 years of his life. And when she was at work, or Chris's dad was at work, the grandmother was the one who watched over Christopher. So those she was, like a surrogate mother figure when mom wasn't there and dad wasn't there. Going forward, from the age of 7 on, Cindy did take on full-time employment, but she still was able to structure her work schedule around the times when Christopher would be home from school. She made sure to try to be there after he got home from school. When Christopher was growing up in his younger years, his family and friends say that he was a very energetic young man. He never really got into a lot of trouble. But he was very reserved, and he was thoughtful towards other people's feelings. So much so, that when he knew a neighbor who was elderly, was unable to mow their lawn anymore, Christopher Watts would do his own lawn with his dad, and then have him and his dad go next door and mow the neighbor's lawn. It was something that Christopher brought to his father. And one of the stories that Christopher's dad shared with family members, even at the age of 8, Christopher Watts was thinking about other people outside of his immediate family. Going forward from the age of 8, in school, he did great. He was never going to be an honor roll student. He didn't learn in the same method that other children would learn. Like, here's a book, read this, tell us about it. That wasn't his style of learning. And children are different. Some learn that way better than other ways, and other children learn when they're hands-on. If you interact them within the actual story, they learn and retain so much more. And that's where Christopher Watts fell. He fell into the group of children that learned more and learned quicker and retained more if he was hands-on in the project, as opposed to just here recite this and repeat this. By the time Christopher Watts got into middle school, he started to date a little. There was only a couple of girls that he dated from his school. He took them to social events, dances. He took them to movies. He spent time with them and other boys and girls who were dating. They hung out at local establishments together. But it's very interesting when you look back at all the women, especially the younger and throughout his life. If you take them all and you put them all together, starting with grandma, mom, aunt, and you put them in next to each other. By the time that we're in here, you're going to see a picture here. Well, make sure you stay to the end. So he dated a little. He became active in extracurricular activities. He loved to play baseball. That was his favorite sport. He did play some football, but it wasn't the calling that maybe his father really wanted. His father was never really a baseball fan. His father was a football fan, but he liked baseball. But still, his father tried to make it to as many of his games as he could and his practices. Now, from the outside looking in, Christopher Watts had a pretty normal childhood. There was never anything traumatic that happened. They moved a little, but there wasn't anything, like they uprooted him all of a sudden and then moved, thousands of miles away. They kept in contact with their community and extended family members. And, by all means, Christopher was happy. Nothing that would forecast, that he was going to eventually end up in the position he's in now. High school, Chris dated. He had a girlfriend. He also dated a couple other girls after that relationship ended. And, one before, and then his girlfriend, and then a couple after. But nothing ever really seriously, was long-term that was going to come out of that. Again, if you line them up in the same line with the others in his life, we're going to get a picture here at the end. After high school, he dated a little, on and off. Then he went to trade school. In there, he dated one lady he was really serious about, but the relationship fell apart, and they parted ways. But it was a mutual split. It wasn't anything that it was his fault or her fault. They were going in different paths in life. He met Shanann, and he started dating her. They weren't exclusive at the beginning. She was kind of seeing someone else, and he was kind of seeing someone else. But he was also getting fed up with. He was never really the bar hopping type. He enjoyed going out with friends and hanging out with them, but he didn't enjoy the bar life. And understandable, it's not for everyone. Not for a lot of people, actually. So he finishes up his schooling. He gets a job working for a local Ford dealership. He's trying to put all his energy and effort into his job. Now, this is something, working for the Ford dealership and being an auto mechanic, this is something that Christopher Watts wanted his entire life. As far as anyone who can remember, this is something that Chris always wanted. From his friend of over 25 years, as far back as he can remember, he said that, Chris always wanted to be a mechanic. That was something that it was like his calling in life. And even his friend was, extremely shocked at the fact that he would give it all up and go work in the oil industry. Something that was completely different from his ultimate goal. Chris's ultimate goal was to someday maybe get a job working in a NASCAR pit crew or work for a drag race company building motors, because he was a hands-on individual. He learned that way, and he loved to work with his hands. This was something that, it was his calling. Even his father, mentioned, and a couple of the other family members mentioned that, if you sat him down with a motor and a wrench, he could tear it apart at a young age, and he could figure out how it worked and put it back together. Gifted, I guess, you could say, in that sense. So he gave up his dream when he was that close to actually attaining his actual overall dream in life. Because just before he left the Ford dealership, he had applied to be a member of a pit crew for a, not NASCAR, but to be a member of an up and coming um, race car driver. And they were seriously considering him. And that driver eventually went on to become a NASCAR driver, and Chris could have went along with him to the NASCAR, and he would have gotten to his ultimate dream. But it never happened. He could never go back once he gave it up, because he moved all the way across the United States to Colorado. In his work, when he first started with the oil company there, and then moved to Colorado, he his job, he turned a wrench every once in a while, but more of along the diagnostic side, where he did the same thing day in, day out, every single day. And it was boring, tedious work that he found no joy in at all. According to his friend, he knew Chris was unhappy with the job, but he stayed there, and he stayed in that job because Shanann refused to move. Now, go back here a little bit. Before he moved out to Colorado, him and Shanann took a trip out there, courtesy of the oil company. They flew him and Shanann out there to look around at homes. The executive from the oil company drove them around to homes that they could afford based on Chris's income that he would be making working out there on the oil fields. But Shanann wasn't going to have anything of it. Those homes were too small, too beneath her, for her to want to live in. She wanted to see the newer homes, the homes where they really couldn't afford to be. And that is where eventually they picked, well, or she picked, to live, to relocate. They flew back to North Carolina, quickly packed up their personal belongings, didn't have time, to take care of all their assets, but hurried out to North Carolina, from North Carolina to Colorado, so Chris could start his job, to start making that sweet oil money. Soon, they found themselves swimming in debt, and rightfully so. They both spent way more than they could afford. Shanann especially. She furnished an entire house that they couldn't afford in the higher end luxury furniture and accessories that she couldn't afford. There was no way they were going to be able to afford. They could have bought, a $200-300 couch. She spent $3,000 on a couch. And now I'm saying all this because I want you to get a picture of their financial situation and how they got to $400,000 in debt on an income of someone who made about $100,000 a year, and someone who was just starting off in a MLM, a basically a pyramid scheme. The only way she was going to make money is if she kept on signing up people and getting them below them, and the money filtered up to her. That was the only way she was ever going to make money. And if she kept on selling this stuff, that she had to she had to sell herself on. She had to sell it to everyone. Everyone had to use it. She had to get Chris to use the video, use it and then videotape it. She had to get her friends in it on it. She had to get her family in on it. Now, I'm going to take another step back. So they've moved to Colorado. They're swimming in debt. The money that Shanann got from the sale of her home in North Carolina, they blew through that money like there was no tomorrow. It was gone. Completely gone. They had nothing. They were swimming. They were living paycheck to paycheck and barely making it then. They filed bankruptcy. Now, we'll take a step back to North Carolina. Because of the animosity between Shanann and Christopher Watt's mother, Cindy, the two of them never really got along. I guess Shanann rubbed Cindy the wrong way when they first met. She found her to be arrogant, self-centered. From how she described Shanann to other family members. And no, this was before what the tragic ending. She described her as arrogant and self-centered before then. So, and then that Christopher Watts, her son, her baby, was now giving up on his dream when he was so close to actually obtaining that dream and going into a business venture to work in an oil company, something vastly different from anything that he's ever wanted. Yes, she didn't get along with Shanann. And the animosity ran both directions. I mean, Shanann did plenty of things to piss Cindy off, and Cindy did things to piss Shanann off. And so much so, they didn't bother to even show up for their wedding. So, back to Colorado. Chris finds himself in a dead-end job, a job that he is completely unhappy with. According to his friends and to his family, he wanted out of the job. He wanted out of the state of Colorado. He wanted to go back to North Carolina. Even if he worked what he called a dead-end job, working in an auto parts store, selling car parts, it was better than being where he was. He didn't want to be there anymore. And for years, people knew this. They knew he wanted out. And yet were surprised that he picked the ending that he did. Did we see this coming? Did anybody see this coming? Well, from the outside looking in, no, nobody saw this coming. But I say, and when I'm looking at this case, we can see that, and understand that he wanted out. Now, along with being in a dead-end job, he felt completely emotionally abandoned by his wife. Someone who was there for him to lean on, to help hold him up, was all of a sudden, one day, she just stopped caring, according to him and to his friends and family. She just stopped. And every time he made an effort to try to rekindle a relationship or do anything, she rebunked it. She just said no. And then, she would do things that made it look like on social media that she was trying to fix this. But she wasn't. She wasn't putting in the effort at all. So, he's in a dead-end job. He's emotionally abandoned by his wife and his only support in that area. Now, you have to keep in mind, in the state of Colorado, he has no friends. There's no one. There's no one for Chris at all. There's plenty of people for Shanann. Shanann made friends. Of course, all those friends ended up selling Lavelle just like she did. And because she had to turn them all into people underneath her so she could make money. Because she made a portion off of each and every one of their sales. That's how a pyramid scheme works. She had to, and as she was making money, she had to buy products to give away. So her income was lowering as she was making more, and then she'd make more, and then she'd spend more. That's how it works. The only one in a pyramid scheme who ever makes money is the person at the top. The people below that never really get anywhere. They may make it, here and there, but then in the end, they all lose. So, it's no surprise that Chris would find himself in the arms of his mistress, Nicole. Because you have to look at Nicole. All right? Nicole was just like Shanann. When Shanann and Chris got together, Shanann worked out. She was physically active and she loved to take hikes. She liked to go for walks. She liked to spend time with Chris. She talked with Chris for long periods of time and helped him work out, any issue that he wasn't able to wrap his mind around. Now, the pictures you've seen of Chris, of the heavier set Chris now, and what he looked like before he started working out and getting back into physical shape are not the pictures of Chris as always. He was always physically fit until a point in his life when the depression really hit, when he was emotionally abandoned by Shanann. He then put on weight, and then he met Nicole. He dropped the weight. I think in 1 month he lost like 13 pounds in one month, and then he lost another 13 pounds. So he lost 26 pounds in rapid succession, back to back months, and was putting on lean muscle. Now, I'm going to make a statement here, and this is from me to you. I, in no way, condone the activities of what Chris did. I in no way condone the activities of what Nicole did in this relationship. But as a researcher, someone who is looking in on this story, I can see how Christopher Watts could and would have done some of the activities. Now, I still can't understand how or why he would kill his family when he had a myriad of different choices, that Red is exposed. He could have walked away. He could have just simply said, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore, gotten on a Greyhound bus and went back to North Carolina. But he didn't do that. For some reason, he felt like he needed to be there. Did he have to be there for his girls? That's the one thing that it has drove me nuts about this case since the beginning. For the loving father, the loving doting father that he was, how did he get to that point from being a loving doting father to a father who is charged with and then eventually pleads guilty to killing those children? How did he get there? I have no clue. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm certainly not a psychotherapist. I don't know how. It's, in my mind, I can't wrap my mind around it. So, here's the bombshell at the end. If you line up all the women again, starting with grandmother, mom, aunt, and the girls he dated in middle school, the girls he dated in high school, the young ladies he dated after high school, and then in Shanann, and then eventually ending with Nicole. You line them all up next to each other. They are all about the same height. Every single one of them. Every single one of them also have the following features that are similar. They all were very active physically. They like to exercise, hike, do extracurricular activities where they had to exert themselves in either kayaking, running, sports, something. They all had that. They all had long brown hair. No one. He never dated anyone with blonde hair. He never dated anyone with black hair. He never dated anybody outside of, white. Is he racist? I don't think so. I've never seen anything that says he was. But he dated a certain type of woman, and he fell in love with a certain type of woman, and eventually he had an affair with a certain type of woman. Every single one of these ladies, from his grandmother on, are all exactly alike. If you line them up from, obviously a younger Cindy and a younger version of his grandmother, you put those pictures up with every one of them. They look like they could all be members of the same family. It's kind of spooky. But all these women also have another trait, another thing that needs to be pointed out. And some of you are not going to, agree with this, but every single one of those women in his life have narcissistic personality. They don't have complete NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder, but they have a certain level of narcissism. Every one of them. If you take a look and close your eyes, clear your mind, go back and look at Shannon's social media profile and her social media score, which is you assign a certain number to every single post on a scale of 1 to 5. If you look at every single one of her social media posts and how she crafted them, she was very narcissistic about the entire thing. And did she have to do this for her Lavelle, sales? She did to a point, but she never had to patronize and belittle and be so demanding upon Chris in her social media. And she did that if you watch him, and you watch all the videos, not just pick and choose which ones, but all of them, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. She was arrogant, self-centered, needy, selfish, patronizing, demanding, and all of these are traits of somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder. She doesn't meet all the boxes and check off all the boxes underneath the NPD, but she came pretty close. Now take a look at Cindy Watts. If you've seen all the videos, and I mean all of them being plural, of her when she was trying to get Chris to take back his plea deal, every single one of them, her interview, her videos that she put on Facebook, the videos that she shared, with her live videos. If you were able to still watch all of them, you would come away with the exact same outcome. Narcissistic. She's yelling out and she's trying to say that she wants Chris to withdraw the plea. But if you watch and you listen to the entire thing, she's doing it for herself. It's not about Chris after a certain point in the video, and it's very quickly on. It's, okay, I want him to remove the plate. Now let's talk about me and let's focus on me. I'm here in front of the camera. Narcissistic. Is Christopher Watts narcissistic, and does he suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD? No. No. Christopher Watts, according to everything that I've read online, and those who have actually read and watched and kept up with Christopher Watts's story and the turn of events, Christopher Watts suffers from something completely different. And all of the therapists and psychologists that I've been able to follow online all believe Christopher Watts suffers from dissociated personality disorder. Kind of hard to say, but dissociated personality disorder. And somebody who suffers from that is easily controlled by someone with a dominating personality. If you take, again, all the women from grandmother on all the way to Nicole, they all have dominating personalities. They took charge, and they molded and they made other people do things around them against their will, or for their will. But Chris doesn't meet all the narcissistic personality disorder outlines. He was never cocky. He never was selfish in his day-to-day activities. Yeah, the ending was selfish, but that you can't judge a person based on the last part of it. You have to look at all the information from his life before this. What did he do before this? What kind of person was he before this? Now, again, in closing, I don't condone anything that he did. I think it was absolutely deplorable. And he is right where he belongs, behind bars for the rest of his life. You stay safe out there.